Thank you so much. I guess just to jump right in, I'm sure everyone's been following the news this week. There are a lot of student movements going on at Yale University. The University of Ithaca just had a walkout this morning. And the president and chancellor of the University of Missouri resigned earlier this week too. I think that this would be a good question for Dr. Reddick as an administrator as well as all of the students.
So I think there's a couple of things at play. The first thing, and I wrote this in the op-ed I wrote today, is that this isn't an issue just sort of sprung up overnight. The fact that the group is called the Concerned Students of 1950 indicates that they have been focused and thinking about the historic, to Lois's point, the historical antecedents that sort of lead us to this place. And of course, the issues of the graduate student protests. Graduate students had their insurance taken away, it was reinstated, but nevertheless, there was a bubbling up of many, I think, constituencies not happy with the leadership they had. And I think more critically, it doesn't seem, and I have empathy for my colleagues at University of Missouri because I don't know all the details. So I'm very careful to speak about what I do know, but it seems that the responses that institutionally were coming out were not adequate at all. And when you have the president confronted by students and he's in a car, and instead of talking to students or the initiatives just to kind of run them over or move them out the way, that is probably leading to what the hostile climate is. And I think this is about campus climate. It seems like the climate at Mizzou for some time has not been embracing of students of color. Obviously, people are making a lot of hay about the impact of the athletes. The football team saying that they would not, boycotting and not playing in the game. That obviously got a lot of attention, a lot of dollar signs were sort of, I guess, being seen as being lost. But I want to point to the importance of coalition building. It seems to me that this whole movement had a lot to do with purposively selecting and talking to people about the issue and finding interest convergence. Like, why should we all care about this? And I look in this room right now and I see so many of you I know and I've seen in other places because you are all part of you care about these issues. But I'm also wondering, where are the students who maybe aren't as engaged? Where are the students who are potentially perpetrating some of these acts? Or more importantly, who know people who are doing these kinds of things, who are bystanders? I'm curious about that. So anyway, I'll stop.
We're trying to address that particular community. I'll tell you right now, they turned the other cheek real quick. You know what I mean? They're like, why should I care? I don't particularly get offended by the Confederate statues or the landscape or whatever. And so it's actually very difficult for them to just, out of the kindness of their heart, come listen to what the down and trodden are facing, you know what I mean? Right. But you're right. It's them that we need to be talking to.
If you're a Mizzou alumnus today, how does your degree feel after what's gone down?
Well,
everybody knows your school, but not for the reasons you want to know them, right? So that's why it matters. I would love for every person in this campus, every part of this community, to be social justice oriented, to care about the humanity of individual students. I want that to happen. In lieu of that, I will accept any concern you have about the prestige, reputation, selling power of your degree. If your university's on the front page of the news because it's clear you have issues dealing with diversity and inclusion, and by proxy, you're not very good at doing this whole thing. Because basically what you've said is that your institution is not doing a good job in this whatsoever. So if I'm a General Motors executive or I'm an Exxon executive and I'm working across the world with different constituencies and you come from a place where you have no facility in doing that, I'm gonna look at the student who comes to the university that actually has things going on. So that's the kind of thing that I want to work on to get students to say, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want my university to be on the front pages for some of this nonsense. That's one way, but I'll be quiet now.
I guess a good follow-up to that would be, what do y'all see going on UT's campus? The movement and the momentum. I know that we had a great town hall yesterday.
For one, I didn't know there were that many Black people at UT.
They all showed up.
That blew my mind. I was like, whoa, brothers and sisters, wait a minute. So, to see them in one room and then, I can carry a lot of issues by myself thinking that, oh man, the landscape is messed up. Why are there Confederate flags flying on campus? Why is all this happening? Why is tuition going up? But these are my thoughts. And to hear Black students express the exact same thing, right? To see different demographics of the Black population represented in that room, but still expressing the exact same frustration. Financial aid came up several times, right? This place being economically, unbearable for students came up several times. And so to see that was really, really, I don't know, I don't want to say healing, that sounds real spiritual, but it was really, really nice to see that students that I care about, that are people I'm trying to represent, were there and that they care about these issues. That being said, the tension in that room shows that things are just at the tipping point, right? Many students from yesterday were like, listen, I'm frustrated, and at this point in time, I am just ready to not only stand in solidarity with what Missouri is doing, but bring action here, right? UT hasn't broken 5% Black student population since Black students have been allowed to be at UT, right? That's unacceptable, right? Our predecessors come here every single year, just to see the same old, nonsense, same old excuses, same old, lack of effort. And the students right now from just that room are frustrated beyond measure. To save the university's image, to bring this value to the degree that the university really wants, they have to address the minority voices, man. They have to. It's the only way.
I think we had some momentum with Jefferson Davis, but I feel like in the past year, it's been a lot of I feel like as the university, as an administration, is just doing the bare minimum. Like when it came to the fraternity party last year, the Border Patrol fraternity party, it was oh, we're not really down for this, but it wasn't on campus, so we can't really do anything. It's it's a 24-hour news cycle. It'll be okay. Even though you had students on this campus protesting and asking for action. And when it came to Jefferson Davis, which I wrote, Black students on this campus weren't just asking for Jefferson Davis to be removed. They were asking for all Confederate imagery on this campus to be removed. So I know a lot of us felt wow, we got that email this summer that was he's coming down. But then there was basically an apology for having Robert E. Lee on our campus, which is, for me, outrageous. I don't know how we defend Confederate leaders on our campus in any capacity, whether or not they had ties to Texas, whatever it may be. I think it's important to confront our past and admit the ugly truths that are there. And all these instances that we've had, it's always been the bare minimum. Even with the Texan Talks, when we asked, or when Lois actually asked President Fenves, what's up with the Black population? And she said 3.9, and I think he said 4.5 or something, which first of all was, incorrect, and secondly, 4.5 isn't a miracle, that's still, I think the Black population of Texas, I believe between 12 and 15, correct me if I'm wrong, please. 12. And so, 4% still is a fraction of that, So I feel like there's a lot of, and it is a lot about saving face, it's a lot about maintaining, what's there and doing a little bit that we can. But I think we're going to have to ask very, very hard questions before the end of this year.
I think it's important to acknowledge that the students of color who are engaging in activism are students, first and foremost. And they have tests, they have jobs, they have rent to pay, and etc. And they have to do all this extra stuff on top of it to feel as though they're welcome. And that takes a severe emotional toll on these students of color. And so maybe some of you can speak to that and how sometimes you might feel as though you're not getting extra resources for the extra work that you're doing.
This year we were going to bring in Janet Mock, and if you don't know who she is, she's a transgender woman of color who just does incredible work. And we've been working on this since May. And for various reasons, we didn't get the money that we needed, and a lot of it just felt like a pushback against queer people, queer bodies actually doing something that mattered. And that was hard enough to swallow. But then we see all of these different things happening on campus. And this is specifically, I guess, talking about the queer community and some of the stuff that we've dealt with. But, student government brought in Leah Delaria. And, they talk about wanting to bring in more queer bodies and more queer speakers. But you're looking at this organization that specifically does work with queer people. And they're saying, no, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, because you don't have the money, even though we asked in multiple ways for multiple people for that money, and have seen other communities on this campus have access to it, we were shut down. And to me, that is like so indicative of not only the POC experience, but also just like the general marginalized minority experience. And then when you combine the two, it just gets like really ugly. You know, we try and we push, and I think it's really important to recognize that at some point we have to breathe and we have to take care of ourselves. And how are we supposed to do that when we are constantly being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and in the smallest ways, but also like the biggest ways, like you were talking about, continually just like having this bare minimum that UT is giving us. They're saying, oh, well, we'll do this to just like sate you right now in hopes that it doesn't get worse. But the thing is, it's just going to keep happening. And, you know, at what point do we get to care about ourselves and enjoy, you know, the time and the energy and the money that we're spending here, and love the experience that we're having, when we're constantly feeling like we don't have space here? I don't know, that's one of my biggest struggles right now with like trying to figure out how to navigate my last year here.
The way the university currently is set up is to not facilitate or to not help foster activist thought. Let me give you an example. Whenever we did talk to President Fenves and we walked out and staged that demonstration, the 20 some odd kids were met with cops, right? This was the same week a kid in South Carolina is getting dragged by her face out of a classroom by a cop for saying nothing, right? When you internalize that, it breaks you down not only emotionally, but for me, it was like physical, right? I had to walk away from the crew that I had brought, and I felt I had put in jeopardy, right? For raising our voices, right? I was physically breaking down. Now, how the university is not going to be kind to that also is by not having even the resources to help recover from that, right? If I go to the Center of like Mental Health and you know, how am I going to explain to somebody who's not a person of color that this is important? You know, me going through this emotions is important. Me feeling this way and the university caring is important.
The fact of the matter is that first and foremost, I am here for my education, and my grades do matter to me, and what, you know, my future goals, like my grades impact that, what I want to do. But at the same time, it's, you know, it's not even like I'm being asked, like you feel the need to be out there doing something, pushing something. And I think about, like in the spring, if you're familiar, there were 3 Muslim students who were shot in Chapel Hill. And, you know, in the beginning, you know, I was working that night, and I came home, and I, you know, hadn't been seeing the news, and I opened my Twitter feed, and all of a sudden I was like, what is happening? You know? And you know, the next morning, like, my mom calls me, and she's like, hey, like, I want you to, like, take care of yourself today, like, are you okay? Make sure, like, and you know, that's when you begin to realize there are certain situations that we're put in that other students don't have to go through. Like, no non-Muslims kid's mom called that morning and was like, I'm worried about you because there are crazy people who probably want to kill you, you know? And for me, like, it was a process. Like, I eventually, that day, I was like, no, I'm going to go to class. And I went to class, and after my first class, I came home because it's very hard, you know? And these are realities that you have to work through. The activism takes time. Half the time, you barely have time to take care of yourself. Like, you know, it is a balance, and I think there are a lot of hard questions you have to ask yourself a lot of times. And sometimes, you know, you'll be seeing people, I see Lois, and I'm like, I'm not